You're sitting in your living room right now, comfortable, safe, scrolling through worst-case scenarios like they're entertainment. The house you're in, with its drywall and vinyl siding and single-pane windows, this is where you plan to ride out the collapse. This is your fortress, your defensible position, your survival plan. Let me ask you something. When the evacuation orders come and 90% of your city empties out in 72 hours, what do you think happens to all those abandoned buildings? Not your house, not residential neighborhoods. I'm talking about the structures everyone ignores, the buildings that sit empty every weekend, the facilities that clear out at 5 p.m., the locations that become strategically valuable the moment population density drops to zero. Here's what most people miss. Your suburban home is a terrible defensive position. 360-degree vulnerability, windows everywhere, wooden frame construction that won't stop rifle rounds, no backup power, no water source beyond what's in the pipes, and most critically, it's in a neighborhood, surrounded by other desperate people who know exactly what resources you have because they've watched you live there for years. But when society evacuates, certain structures transform. Buildings designed for mundane commercial or industrial purposes suddenly become tactical advantages. Locations everyone drives past without noticing become impenetrable strongholds. And the people who understand this, who recognize which empty buildings offer natural defenses, resource access, and long-term sustainability, those people have fortress-level security, while everyone else is defending cardboard boxes with curtains. I'm going to show you the 6 location types that become fortresses when society evacuates. These aren't the places preppers talk about. These aren't cabins in the woods or rural farmland. These are urban and suburban structures hiding in plain sight right now. And after watching this, you'll never look at your city the same way again. If you want to understand why most people's fortress plans will get them killed in the first week, hit subscribe. Drop a comment with the most defensible building in your area. Let's get tactical. Location 1. Multi-story parking structures. And before you laugh, let me explain why these become impenetrable positions when everyone evacuates. Every city has them. Every suburb has them. They're next to shopping centers, office buildings, hospitals, airports. And when the evacuation happens, they empty completely. No residents, no businesses operating inside them. Just empty concrete floors with 360-degree visibility and elevation advantage. Here's the tactical assessment. Parking structures are fortress-level defensive positions because of 3 factors: construction, access control, and resource proximity. Let's start with construction. These buildings are engineered to hold thousands of pounds per square foot. Reinforced concrete floors, steel-reinforced columns. They're built to code, and then some because the liability of structural failure is massive. That means those walls and floors will stop small arms fire. That means they won't burn. That means they're resistant to forced entry at scale. The floors are solid concrete, typically 6 inches to 12 inches thick with rebar throughout. You're not shooting through that with anything short of heavy ordnance. The exterior walls on each level are either concrete or concrete block. Same story. The support columns are massive reinforced concrete designed to hold up 8 or 10 floors above them. This is military bunker-level construction that nobody thinks about because it's just a parking garage. Now let's talk about access control. Most parking structures have limited entry points. 1 vehicle ramp up, 1 vehicle ramp down, maybe 2 pedestrian stairwells. That's it. You're not breaching this from multiple directions. You're not surrounding it effectively. Anyone trying to access this position has to funnel through predictable choke points where you have elevation advantage and clear fields of fire. And here's the advantage everyone misses. You can collapse access. Vehicle ramps can be blocked with abandoned cars. Stairwell doors can be welded or reinforced from inside. You can turn a structure with 5 entry points into a structure with 1 entry point you control absolutely. Now someone wants your position? They're coming up 1 ramp in the open with you above them. That's a kill box. That's tactically unwinnable for attackers. But the real advantage is resource proximity. Parking structures don't exist in isolation. They're attached to or adjacent to shopping centers, grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores. When everyone evacuates, those stores are abandoned. Full inventory just sitting there. You have immediate access to months of supplies within 50 yards of your defensive position. While everyone else is living in isolated rural cabins wondering where their next meal comes from, you're pulling supplies from the target attached to your fortress. And here's what makes this exponentially better. Weather protection with ventilation. You're not in a sealed bunker. You're in a structure with open sides for vehicle exhaust ventilation. That means fresh air circulation, natural light, no carbon monoxide buildup, no moisture condensation that creates mold. You have protection from rain and snow without the suffocation problems of underground shelters. You can set up living quarters on an interior section of an upper floor, away from exterior walls behind concrete columns. You have sightlines to all approaches. You have elevation that multiplies your defensive capability. And you have the psychological advantage that nobody thinks of parking structures as valuable real estate. They're thinking houses, cabins, military installations, not the place they parked their Honda last Tuesday. Location 2. Industrial self-storage facilities. The places with hundreds of identical orange doors where people store their extra furniture and Christmas decorations. These facilities are everywhere, and when society evacuates, they become ready-made fortress compartments with resource caches and tactical advantages that high-end preppers would pay millions to build from scratch. Here's why self-storage facilities are fortress-level positions. Compartmentalization, security infrastructure, resource density, and low-value appearance. Let's break down each factor. Compartmentalization means the entire structure is divided into individual secure rooms. Each unit has its own locking door, usually reinforced steel on rollers. Each unit shares no interior access with adjacent units. You're not defending one large open space. You're defending segmented, individually secured compartments where you control which units are accessible and which are sealed. This is massive tactical advantage. You can store different resource categories in different units. Food in one, water in another, medical supplies in a third, ammunition in a fourth. If one unit is compromised, you haven't lost everything. If fire starts in one section, concrete walls between units contain it. If you need to abandon a position quickly, you can seal units and return later because the facility structure remains secure. Security infrastructure is already installed. These facilities are designed to prevent break-ins. That means perimeter fencing, usually 8-foot chain link with razor wire at some locations. That means limited access points with vehicle gates. That means motion sensing lights. That means security cameras throughout. And most critically, that means interior access corridors with limited entry points. Many facilities are multi-story, with elevator-only access to upper floors. You can control the elevator. You can barricade the stairs. You've created a vertical fortress with restricted access that's exponentially easier to defend than horizontal structures. Resource density is something people overlook. When everyone evacuates, they leave their stored possessions behind. These facilities contain furniture, which you can repurpose, tools, which become valuable for repairs and construction, clothing and blankets, which provide insulation, sporting equipment, which includes weapons in many cases, electronics, which might be useful for communications or trade. You're sitting on a resource warehouse that most people don't even think about because it's just storage. And here's the dark advantage. Many people store actual survival supplies in these units. Camping gear, emergency food, water barrels, generators. They bought this stuff, never used it, put it in storage, and then evacuated without taking it. You're not just defending empty rooms. You're acquiring pre-positioned resources that people literally paid to secure in a defensible location for you. Low-value appearance means nobody prioritizes these facilities as targets. In the first weeks of collapse, looters hit houses, stores, pharmacies, gun shops. They're looking for obvious value in obvious locations. A self-storage facility looks like storage. No food, no medicine, no immediate value. So it gets ignored while everyone fights over the Walmart. By the time people start thinking about storage facilities, you've already fortified your position and cataloged resources. But here's the critical requirement. You need to identify and claim this position early. Because once other people figure out the same tactical advantage, you're competing for the same fortress. You need to recon storage facilities in your area now. Note which ones have the best perimeter security, which ones have climate-controlled interior corridors, which ones are near resource-rich areas but not in primary traffic corridors. Map them, photograph them. Know the access codes if you can acquire them legitimately. Location 3. Suburban office parks. The generic 3-story glass and concrete buildings surrounded by parking lots where nothing interesting happens. insurance companies, software developers, marketing agencies, accounting firms. These buildings empty every night at 6 p.m., and when everyone evacuates, they become fortress positions with infrastructure, resources, and tactical advantages that residential structures can't match. Here's the strategic value: power generation, water systems, commercial kitchen facilities, medical supplies, communications infrastructure, and complete abandonment. Office buildings are designed for sustained occupation by hundreds of people. That means they have backup generators, usually natural gas or diesel units capable of running essential systems. That means they have commercial water heaters and bathroom facilities designed for high capacity. That means they have break rooms with refrigeration and food storage. That means they have first aid supplies for employee safety compliance. The construction is commercial grade: steel frame, concrete between floors, fire-rated walls between sections. This isn't residential stick frame construction. These buildings are engineered for durability and fire safety. That concrete between floors doesn't just reduce noise, it creates defensive barriers that segment the structure vertically. Someone breaches the first floor? You're secured on the second and third floors with time to respond. Access control is manageable because office buildings have limited entry points at ground level. Glass doors and windows on the first floor, sure, those are vulnerable initially. But once you secure those entry points with barricades or reinforcement, you have a structure where upper floors are accessible only through interior stairwells you control. Many office buildings have roof access, which provides observation advantage, escape routes, and potential landing zones for resupply if you're coordinating with outside parties. Here's what makes office parks specifically valuable. They're in suburban locations away from urban density, not downtown high-rises where population concentration makes defense impossible. These are 3 to 5-story buildings in areas that empty out completely on weekends and after hours. When everyone evacuates, you have square footage, infrastructure, and security in a location with minimal competition from other survivors. Resource acquisition is straightforward because office parks cluster together. 5 to 10 buildings in one development, each building represents different resources. IT companies have communications equipment, medical offices have pharmaceutical supplies, building maintenance companies have tools and hardware, engineering firms have technical documentation. You're not limited to what's in one structure. You have an entire campus of resources within defendable perimeter. And here's the tactical multiplier: office parks have interior space for agriculture. Large interior rooms with windows provide natural light for growing food. Break rooms have water sources for irrigation. You're not just surviving on stored supplies. You're establishing sustainable food production in climate-controlled space with existing infrastructure. Rooftop space can support container gardens. Parking lots can be converted to raised bed agriculture. You have land use without rural exposure. But here's the dark reality: office buildings are obvious targets once people start thinking strategically. The advantages I just described? Other people figure them out, which means you're competing for these positions, which means you need to claim and fortify early, which means you might have to defend against groups who want what you've secured. Office parks are fortress-level positions, but they're not invisible. They're viable, which makes them valuable, which makes them contested. Location 4. Water and wastewater treatment plants. These are the facilities most people drive past every day without thinking about. Ugly industrial compounds with chain-link fences and concrete structures. They smell bad or look uninviting. And that's exactly why they become fortress positions with the single most valuable resource in any collapse scenario: water processing capability. Let me teach you something about infrastructure that changes everything. Water treatment plants don't just store water. They purify it, at scale, with redundant systems. These facilities are designed to process millions of gallons daily. They have settling tanks, filtration systems, chemical treatment capability, and testing equipment. When society evacuates and municipal water stops flowing, these facilities still contain the equipment and knowledge base to process water indefinitely. The construction is industrial fortress level because these are critical infrastructure sites. Reinforced concrete everywhere, minimal windows, limited access points with vehicle-rated gates. Perimeter fencing that's already high security because these facilities were protecting water supply from contamination and terrorism concerns. Many have backup power systems because water treatment can't just stop when the grid fails. You're not building security from scratch. You're occupying a position that was already designed as a secured facility. Resource value is absolute. Water is survival. Control the water source and you control leverage over everyone within your operational range. People need water every day. You have the capability to process contaminated water into potable water. That makes your position valuable for trade, for coalition building, for establishing authority in a collapsed region. You're not just surviving. You're providing a service that makes you indispensable. Here's the tactical consideration most people miss. Treatment plants are usually located near water sources, rivers, lakes, reservoirs. You have access to unlimited raw water. Your only limitation is processing capability and chemical supplies for treatment. But many facilities have months of chlorine and treatment chemicals on site. And if you understand the biological and mechanical treatment processes, you can extend chemical supplies by using settling and filtration to do more of the purification work before chemical treatment. Defensibility is high because these facilities are isolated by design. They're not in residential areas because nobody wants to live next to a wastewater plant. They're in industrial zones or on the edge of municipalities. When everyone evacuates, you have distance from population density. You have clear sight lines across open approaches. You have minimal concealment for attackers. Anyone coming at you is exposed across hundreds of yards of open ground. But here's the complexity. These facilities require operational knowledge. You can't just walk into a treatment plant and start processing water without understanding the systems. Chemical dosing is precise. Flow rates matter. Contamination protocols are critical. You need someone who understands water treatment engineering, or you need documentation and time to learn systems before you need them. This is not plug and play. This is technical expertise that becomes your survival qualification. And here's the dark reality. Critical infrastructure attracts attention. Government remnants, military units, organized groups. Everyone understands water is valuable. Treatment facilities are known strategic assets. You're not securing an unknown position. You're claiming something that will be contested by forces with more resources and manpower than you. This is high reward, high risk. Fortress-level position, but you're painting a target on yourself. Location 5. Coastal marina facilities and yacht clubs. Specifically the infrastructure, docks, maintenance buildings, fuel storage, and the vessels themselves. Most people evacuating head inland, away from potential flooding, away from hurricanes, away from population centers near water, which means coastal marinas empty almost completely, and that creates fortress opportunities that combine mobility, resources, and natural defensive barriers. Here's the strategic value. Maritime vessels are mobile fortresses with built-in life support. They have water storage and desalination capability. They have food storage. They have sleeping quarters. They have communications equipment. And critically, they provide escape routes. If your land position becomes untenable, you're not trapped. You cast off and relocate to another coastal position or island location. That mobility is a tactical advantage no fixed position provides. Marina infrastructure includes resources most people ignore. Fuel storage, diesel and gasoline for vessels. Maintenance facilities with tools, parts, and mechanical equipment. Ship stores with supplies for extended maritime operations. And in many cases, yacht clubs have full-service facilities with kitchens, lodging, shower facilities, and backup power systems because wealthy boat owners expect comfort. The defensive advantage is the water barrier. You're not accessible by foot or standard vehicle traffic. Someone wants to attack your position? They need boats. They need maritime operational knowledge. They need to approach across open water where you have visibility and firing positions from elevated dock structures or vessel decks. Amphibious assault is exponentially more complex than land-based attack. Weather becomes a defensive ally. Rain, fog, storms, these conditions that make everyone else miserable become tactical advantages when you're in a protected marina with shelter, and your attackers are exposed in boats trying to navigate unfamiliar waters. Most people can't operate vessels in marginal conditions. You learn these skills or you recruit people who have them, and suddenly you have a fortress that's accessible only when you allow access. But here's the tactical requirement. You need maritime knowledge, navigation, vessel operation, maintenance, weather assessment. If you don't have these skills, coastal marinas are just expensive structures near water. You need to be able to move vessels, to navigate safely, to maintain engines and systems, to understand tides and currents. This isn't land-based tactical knowledge. This is specialized skill set that most preppers don't have. Resource sustainability includes fishing and aquaculture if you're in the right location. You have protein sources that don't require agriculture. You have water that can be desalinated for drinking. You have transportation for trade with other coastal communities. You're not isolated in rural land position. You're connected to maritime network that might maintain function when land-based logistics collapse. And here's the dark reality about coastal positions: environmental vulnerability, hurricanes, flooding, sea level changes, saltwater corrosion that degrades everything. You're trading land-based threats for environmental hazards that can destroy your position without human intervention. Marina fortresses are viable in stable weather. They're death traps in major storms if you don't have evacuation protocols and alternative positions. Location 6. Suburban shopping mall anchor stores. Not the entire mall. Those massive multi-level retail complexes are indefensible. I'm talking about the big box anchor stores at the corners, the former department stores or sporting goods retailers, single-story or two-story structures with warehouse-scale interior space, loading dock access, and commercial infrastructure. Here's why these become fortress positions. Square footage with minimal exterior walls. These buildings are 80,000 to 200,000 square feet under one roof. That's enormous living and storage space. But here's the tactical advantage. Most of that space is interior. The exterior wall-to-floor area ratio is incredibly favorable. You're not defending hundreds of windows like a residential area. You're defending a few vehicle entrances, loading docks, and customer entry points. Everything else is windowless exterior wall or roof. Construction is commercial grade. Steel frame, concrete tilt-up walls or concrete block, fire-resistant materials throughout because commercial buildings codes are strict. These walls will stop small arms fire. These roofs are designed for heavy snow loads and won't collapse easily. The loading dock areas have reinforced concrete for truck traffic. You have structural integrity that residential buildings can't match. Interior space can be compartmentalized. You can use existing retail fixtures and warehouse shelving to create internal barriers and secure zones. You can designate living areas, storage areas, workshop areas, agricultural areas near the old garden center if this was a home improvement store. That massive interior volume becomes a self-contained community space that's climate-controlled if you can maintain power. Resource acquisition is straightforward because these stores are attached to shopping malls or surrounded by other retail. Grocery stores, pharmacies, electronics stores, clothing retailers, hardware stores. You have resource density within walking distance of your fortress position. And because anchor stores often have their own parking lot separate from main mall access, you're not forced to defend the entire mall complex. You're isolated enough to be defensible, but close enough to access resources. Loading dock access provides vehicle entry that's already designed for logistics. You can drive trucks directly into your facility through bay doors. You can resupply. You can relocate resources. You can operate vehicles under cover. That's tactical mobility combined with fortress security. Most positions force you to choose between secure structure or vehicle access. Anchor stores give you both. And here's the advantage everyone overlooks: low initial targeting. In the first weeks of collapse, looters hit grocery stores and pharmacies. They empty gun shops and sporting goods retailers. But a vacant department store? No immediate value. Nothing worth risking confrontation over. So it gets ignored while everyone fights over the Walmart and CVS. By the time people start looking at larger structures for occupation, you've already secured and fortified your position. But here's the critical limitation: heating and cooling. These buildings are massive open spaces designed for HVAC systems that require grid power or significant fuel supplies. Without power, you're in a giant metal box that's freezing in winter and baking in summer depending on your climate. You need alternative heating sources, which means fuel supplies and ventilation planning. You need to compartmentalize living spaces to reduce the volume you're trying to condition. This isn't impossible, but it requires planning and resources most people don't think about until they're already cold or overheating. Here's what all 6 locations have in common: they're hiding in plain sight. They're structurally superior to residential buildings. They're ignored by the majority who are thinking about houses and cabins and rural land. And they're only fortresses if you recognize their value before everyone evacuates and competition begins. You can't claim these positions after the collapse. You need reconnaissance now. You need to identify which parking structure in your area has the best defensive characteristics, which self-storage facility has climate-controlled interior access and perimeter security, which office park has backup generators and resource proximity, which treatment plant has defensible approaches and operational simplicity, which marina has protected waters and vessel options, which anchor store has the right combination of space and security. Map them, photograph them, note access points and vulnerabilities, document resource proximity, assess what skills you'd need to occupy and defend each position. Because when the evacuation orders come, you won't have time for analysis. You'll have hours to move before traffic locks up and chaos makes travel impossible. And here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say. Even the best fortress position doesn't make you invincible. Determined attackers with numbers and resources will eventually breach any position. Fire doesn't care about concrete walls. Starvation doesn't care about defensive perimeters. Disease doesn't care about ammunition stockpiles. These locations give you tactical advantages, better odds, more time, but they don't give you guarantees. The difference between having a fortress plan and not having one is the difference between defending from strength versus scrambling from weakness, between choosing your battles versus being forced into indefensible positions, between surviving the first month with resources intact versus dying in your suburban house in the first week. Here's your choice. You can keep thinking your house is defensible because you have a shotgun and some canned food. Or you can open a new tab right now and start mapping fortress locations in your area. You can use Google Maps satellite view to identify parking structures with optimal defensive characteristics. You can drive to self-storage facilities and assess their security infrastructure. You can recon office parks and note which buildings have backup power visible on the roof. You can research which treatment plants are closest to your position. You can visit marinas and identify vessels that might be accessible in crisis. You can scout anchor stores and evaluate interior space. 99% won't do this. They'll stick with their suburban fortress fantasy until reality kicks in their front door. But you can be part of the 1% who thinks strategically about position before position becomes the only thing that matters. And within that 1%, you can be part of the 0.1% who actually reconnoiters these locations instead of just thinking about it. The difference between thinking and doing is whether you're in a fortress when everyone else evacuates or in a house when everyone else comes back desperate. Your move.